It was a dark and stormy night, and Sarah was walking home from her late-night shift at the diner. She always took the same route, but tonight was different. She felt like she was being watched, like someone or something was following her. Suddenly, she heard a rustling in the bushes. She turned around, but she couldn't see anything. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding in her chest. As she neared her apartment building, she saw a figure in the distance. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, with a long coat and a wide-brimmed hat. But something was off. He had no head. Sarah froze in terror as the headless man began to walk towards her, his coat billowing in the wind. She tried to run, but her legs felt like lead. The headless man was getting closer and closer, and she could feel his breath on her neck. Suddenly, a car pulled up beside her, and the driver yelled at her to get in. She jumped in the car and slammed the door shut, and they sped off into the night. Sarah didn't know what to make of what she had seen. Was it just her imagination? Or was there really a headless man stalking her? She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, even in the safety of her own home. The next day, Sarah decided to do some research. She went to the library and looked up stories of local legends and myths. That's when she found it. A story about a headless man who stalked people on the same route she took to work. Legend had it that the headless man was once a wealthy businessman who had an affair with a woman. When his wife found out, she was so angry that she cut off his head and hid it in the woods. Now the headless man walks the streets looking for revenge. Sarah was terrified. She didn't know what to do. She couldn't afford to take a different route to work, and she couldn't quit her job. She was trapped. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah became increasingly paranoid. Every time she turned around, she thought she saw the headless man. Every time she heard a noise at night, she thought he was breaking into her apartment. One night, Sarah heard a loud banging at her door. She peeked through the peephole and saw the headless man standing on her doorstep. She screamed and ran to the back of her apartment, but she knew it was only a matter of time before he found her. In a last-ditch effort to save herself, Sarah decided to go to the woods and find the headless man's severed head. She had nothing to lose. As she walked through the woods, she felt like she was being watched. Every sound made her jump, and every shadow made her heart race. But she didn't give up. She was determined to find the head and end the curse once and for all. Finally, after hours of searching, she found it. The head of the headless man. She picked it up and held it close, feeling a strange sense of relief. But as she turned to leave, she saw something in the distance. The headless man walking towards her. Sarah ran as fast as she could, but she knew she couldn't outrun him. She turned around and faced him, holding the head in front of her like a weapon. The headless man stopped in his tracks and looked at her as if he was surprised. Suddenly, the headless man's body began to dissolve, and he disappeared into thin air. Sarah stood there, panting and shaking, with the head still in her hand. She had finally defeated the headless man and broken the curse. As she made her way back home, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. She had faced her fears head-on and emerged victorious. She knew that the memory of the headless man would haunt her for a long time. But she was ready to move on and put the past behind her. From that day on, Sarah took a new route to work, one that avoided the woods where the headless man had once roamed. She started to feel more at ease, and slowly but surely, her life returned to normal. However, as time went on, Sarah noticed that strange things were happening around her. Objects would move on their own, doors would slam shut, and she heard strange whispers in the middle of the night. She couldn't explain what was going on, but she knew that it had something to do with the headless man. One night, Sarah was awoken by a loud noise. She sat up in bed and saw the headless man standing in front of her, his body now whole and his head attached. He raised his hand and pointed at her, his eyes full of rage. Sarah screamed and tried to run, but the headless man was too fast. He caught her and dragged her into the woods where he had once roamed. Sarah knew that this was it. The headless man had finally caught her. But just as she was about to give up hope, Sarah saw a glimmer of light in the distance. It was a group of people armed with torches and pitchforks who had come to vanquish the headless man once and for all. They fought with all their might, and after a long and grueling battle, they managed to defeat the headless man. Sarah was rescued, and she knew that she would never forget the horrors she had faced. In the end, Sarah realized that she had become a part of the legend of the headless man. She had faced her fears and emerged victorious, and in doing so, had become a hero in her own right. The memory of the Headless Man would haunt her forever, but she knew that she had the strength to overcome anything that came her way. And as she walked away from the woods, she knew that she had faced her greatest fear and had come out on top. For Sarah, the legend of the Headless Man would always be a reminder of her own strength and resilience, and a testament to the power of the human spirit. Years passed, and Sarah grew old. She had children and grandchildren, and she had lived a full and happy life. However, even in her old age, she never forgot the terror of the Headless Man. One day, as she sat in her rocking chair, she heard a knock at the door. She got up to answer it and saw a young woman standing on her doorstep, looking scared and lost. The woman told Sarah that she had heard the legend of the Headless Man and had come to ask for her help. She had been walking through the woods and had felt a presence following her. She was sure that it was the Headless Man, come back to haunt her. Sarah smiled and told the woman her story. She told her how she had faced her fears and had broken the curse of the Headless Man. She told her that she had the strength within her to face whatever was out there, and that she would never have to be afraid again. The woman listened intently, and Sarah could see the fear slowly leaving her face. She thanked Sarah for her words of wisdom and left, feeling braver than she had ever felt before. As Sarah sat back down in her rocking chair, she realized that she had passed on the legacy of the Headless Man to a new generation. She had given someone else the tools they needed to face their fears and emerge victorious. And as she looked out at the world, she knew that there would always be legends and tales of horror, but that there would also be people like her who had the courage to face their fears and break the curse. For Sarah, the legend of the Headless Man would always be a reminder of the strength of the human spirit and the power of overcoming fear.